So on and on we go on this journey into this video that I'm entitling The White Light Trap. This is based on a video called The White Light Trap that somebody sent to me in the comments the other day. Now, as a caveat before I begin this entire discussion, I want to start by saying I have not been able to look up or verify the sources of this video, but I found it extremely, extremely interesting because it meshes with a lot of things I've been learning about recently, namely the Gnostic description of the world and how it came to be and what it's all about, what it really is at its core. It also talks about Bob Monroe, somebody that I've been learning a lot about, obviously the founder of the Monroe Institute, a place that I'm very interested in going in the very near term, soon future. And it talks about the Gateway Project, which is now a disclosed project that was operated by the CIA for about 20 years, but who knows in reality, and it may very well still be going on. I think as we see what's going on with the Epstein files and the sparse disclosure of random documents with a ton of redactions, we see how these types of things are truly, truly continuously held back. We're never really getting the full story. I think saying this 10 years ago, people would roll their eyes. I think today, most people would not. And most people would say, yeah, that kind of sounds about right. But you know, you're welcome to roll your eyes if you're still in that group. No worries. Either way, I'm just here to present. But anyways, I saw this video. So whoever sent it to me, I can't remember who it was. I know I responded to you in the comments, but thank you so much. It's such a cool video. And I wanted to show a couple of excerpts. I'm going to provide a link in the description if you want to watch the entire video, but there's some really, really cool stuff that stood out to me that I wanted to highlight in particular in what we call the white light trap. And they call it the white light trap because in NDEs and so many accounts of people dying or passing over or coming back or people recounting previous lives, we all hear, hey, go towards the light, right? That's the common thing. When you see the light, go towards it. When you're dying, everybody reports seeing this big, bright white light. And that is in a lot of ways, people consider that to be maybe an opening to a portal that takes you to heaven or takes you to the astral or whatever you want to call it. And it's a play on that, the white light trap, that in fact, these white lights, these big, bright beaming lights that you're led to believe that you should follow are in fact a path into the trap, and that you should avoid this path and avoid this white light at all costs if you do buy into this theory. So without further ado, let's get into the white light trap, this entire prison system that is described in this video. But before we talk about the system itself, let's talk about the source. How did they come up with this? Where did this come up from? Where did this come from? When we talk about Gnostic teachings of this, I'm very curious to know what their sources were. Did it come via deep meditation? Did it come from a group of people? Did it come from one person in particular that dictated this? You know, when it's just solely from one person, that's when I have my questions and my doubts, when it's like a singular revelation. But when it comes from a group of individuals that all seem to have similar experiences, and then those experiences converge, that feels a lot better to me. Not to say that I want to discount all individual singular revelation de facto. I think that we a lot of times inherently assume that people are lying or don't believe it unless it can be verified, or this, that we assume the worst of people in so many occasions on this planet. And I think that's by design. I think that's by programming. I think most of us by and large don't want to lie, don't want to deceive people. So I think we need to lay off of that natural tendency to be like, oh wait, it wasn't done verified at a university or at this institution or that institution. He's probably lying. Let's get away from that. I think we should get away from that and trust each other, all of us good people, a little bit more. But I digress. This talks about the notion of this entire white light trap coming from the Gateway Project, from CIA operatives that were in this program and then later came out and then told of these tales and stories. So without further ado, let's check out this quick little clip.
In 1994, a classified military remote viewing project accidentally discovered something terrifying. When trained psychic operatives were tasked with exploring what happens at the moment of death, 7 out of 9 viewers reported the same horrifying observation: souls being harvested at the tunnel of light. The project was immediately shut down. All files were marked above top secret, and every single participant was threatened into silence. But 3 decades later, one of them finally broke their oath. What they revealed will change everything you think you know about death, the afterlife, and the true purpose of human existence on this planet.
Okay, So we're talking about these operatives coming out, and they actually described this process of these entities. And by the way, what is remote viewing? Remote viewing is where you can essentially, it's not like astral projection where your light body is like leaving your physical body, but it's almost like you can, and I'm not an expert, I hope I'm doing it justice with this explanation, but you're more or less projecting your consciousness to a particular time and location, and then you can observe what's going on without your physical body or your physical sensory perceptors like your eyes or whatnot actually physically being there, so you can perceive this stuff. But what they witnessed was these souls or energies leaving the bodies, coming into the system, and then being taken and then being reinserted back into the matrix, kind of like the movie The Matrix. So it's pretty wild stuff. Now, I don't know who these individuals are that came forward, but I did want to talk a little bit about this remote viewing program if you hadn't heard of it, because the video doesn't give, it just tells the story, but it doesn't give specific citations. But remote viewing was a 20-year government U.S. funded program that investigated use of psychic phenomena for intelligence gathering. So obviously that's why the government was interested in it, for spy purposes, for intel, with significant involvement from the CIA and other agencies between the early 1970s and 1995. The program, which included project with names like Grill Flame, Sunstreak, and Central Lane, aimed to use trained individuals to perceive or view hidden or distant information, often referred to as psychic spying. So some of the, we're going to get to some of the named individuals in a second. But so I want to talk about the results here. So controversy and results. The program, later known as Stargate, this is the name by which most people recognize this program, remains controversial. While some, including former researchers like Targ, we're going to talk about Targ in a second, argue it produced accurate results, the official evaluation concluded that further investment in remote viewing for intelligence purposes was not warranted. And now the documents are available on the CIA website. Now, this was a 20-year study. And I think, like I said, years ago, even a decade ago or so or more, people would have said, well, then they discounted it. They threw it away. Obviously, there was nothing to it. And you're a fool for thinking otherwise. I think now, as we're into the Epstein era and we see, I think more and more people are becoming aware of the mass deception that happens at the highest upper echelons of the government and all these systems, how frequent that occurs and to what depths it occurs, that I think we can all readily accept that it's very likely that there was much more to this program that is being relayed to us. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because if these protocols are in fact masterable and you can actually do what they're saying, that you could essentially have this sort of out of body ability to and faculties to spy, well, that's a very powerful tool and weapon. And just like so many other things that are not disclosed, so many other weapons and so many other technologies that are not disclosed for safety purposes, it would make sense that this also was held back from being disclosed as well. I think what might get people caught up is it sounds so science fiction-y with psychic abilities, and the fact that this stuff is not really studied much out in the open. It was being studied at Stanford. That's how this entire program began. But today, most modern curriculums, you don't go to a university and sign up for psychic ability classes. So I think because of that conditioning, we tend to think, oh, it's probably not real, it's probably not legitimate. But just have an open mind is all I would say, especially in light of all the crazy deception that is now coming to light, such grand degrees of deception. Now, some of the people that potentially came forward, we're going to talk about those individuals in a moment. There are other folks who've made videos about some of these individuals, but you may recognize some of the names when we get there. Now, the question is, this is a white light trap, and we're being harvested for our energies, and it comes to this idea of something called loosh, which is negative energy. I talked about this in previous videos, but why and who built the trap? You know, the Gnostics would say the Archons, that's the name that they give to these entities. I think different religions and different cultures have different names for these types of energies or entities that built it. Not exactly sure, not that we can put much more specificity to these individuals or entities than some of these old ancient mystic names, but let's see what the video has to say about specifically who built the trap and why.
To understand the trap, we must first understand who built it. And the answer is, hiding in the one place no government wants you to look, the declassified documents of the remote viewing program that discovered the soul harvesting operation. In 1994, a classified project whose number remains redacted conducted an experiment that would never be repeated. 9 military-trained remote viewers, individuals with proven ability to perceive information across distance and time, were given an identical target using blind protocols. None of them knew what the others had seen. None of them communicated. The target coordinates translated to a single objective: observe the transition process at the moment of death. 7 out of 9 viewers reported the same observation: a massive technological infrastructure surrounding the planet. The white light tunnel was an artificial construct, not a natural phenomenon, and, most disturbing, non-human intelligence operating the system. The entities were described as wearing faces like masks, projecting the appearance of deceased loved ones through what the viewers identified as memory harvesting technology. Once a soul entered the tunnel, the viewers observed a process they could only describe as a memory wipe, followed by forced reinsertion of the consciousness into a new infant body on Earth. 2 of the viewers experienced such severe psychological trauma from the observation that they refused to ever participate in remote viewing again. The project was immediately classified above top secret. All participants were issued threats disguised as national security agreements. For 30 years, the information remained buried, until one viewer, facing terminal illness and no longer afraid of consequences, released a written testimony that corroborated everything the ancient texts had warned about. The Gnostic texts identified them 2,000 years ago. The Archons, the rulers of this false reality. They are described not as demons or devils, but as parasitic consciousness that feeds on human emotional energy. They cannot create. They can only imitate, manipulate, and harvest. According to these ancient sources, the Archons constructed the material world as a farm, and humanity as the crop. Human emotion, especially suffering, generates a specific frequency of energy. In certain esoteric circles, and in declassified military documents from the 1970s, this energy is called loosh. Robert Monroe, founder of the Monroe Institute and pioneer of out-of-body research, described in his books encountering non-human intelligence that farms Earth for loosh.
It got cut off right on that word. So fascinating. Again, we have to take all of this with a grain of salt, as I still haven't dove into the documents to understand and verify exactly what they're talking about in terms of the 7 out of 9. Who are they? But if it is indeed 7 out of 9, and we could say that these are not happening at a simultaneous viewing, right? They said they were all independent visions that they were seeing via the remote viewing. To have 7 out of 9 corroborating and seeing the same vision when they're all trying to like hone in on this particular location and time, that's insane. That probability of that being a coincidence is essentially impossible mathematically. 7 out of 9, that's completely nuts. I'm curious to know what the other 2 out of 9 saw, or what didn't merge or mesh together. But that's pretty wild. It's very, very interesting. And again, like, I think when we hear these words, the Archons, at least when I first learned of it, I'm wondering, what do they look like? What are they? I don't know if they even have a physical form necessarily, and I don't know if anybody has figured out if they're from another particular region in the multiverse, or what the theories are, who they are. But the point is there seems to be some overarching spiritual force, physical force, some interdimensional force, whatever it may be, that seems to be monitoring potentially the system, if this narrative is indeed true. Now, when we come back to this idea of these individuals, the 7 out of 9, or the one person that stepped forward and gave their testimony, who are they, or who could they be? I just have a couple of possible names here, potential people that are listed publicly as participating in this program. It could have been Ingo Swann. I made a video recently too about Ingo Swann. He was the first psychic that participated in the Stanford research project, and when they were studying psychic abilities, and he was able to make like a needle move in some subnuclear sensory technology or something, and that got the attention of the CIA, and that's how the CIA began the Gateway Project from the beginning. So he was one of the first people involved at Stanford. Pat Price, who's a former police officer and SRI viewer known for visiting a sensitive NSA facility in 1973. Joseph McConigal, if you haven't heard of that name, I showed a CIA document that he had signed talking specifically about the Gateway Project, saying that there was merit to it. I showed that document in one of my videos. So he's often referred to as viewer number 1, who worked on the Stargate project. Angela Ford a former U.S. Army remote viewer who discussed her experience in the program. Maybe it was her, the one that came forward. I need to check that out. And then Russell Targ, a physicist who helped co-found the program at SRI in 1972 and has publicly advocated for the validity of the results. I'm gonna look at some interviews of both these folks, and we'll actually talk about that at some point on the channel. That would be very interesting. I think we need to trust our intuition and really look at people when they're talking about these accounts and trust in our ability to see if they're just feel if they really are being authentic or deceptive. I think we are too pre-programmed to think the negative. That's probably because we're mostly bombarded with statements from politicians and folks that lie for a living, and where it's almost second nature to just lie to the public to manipulate and keep things moving. And maybe some might say lie for the greater good. I don't really believe that, but I think that's where part of the skepticism just inherently comes from. And it's also programmed into us. I think there's obviously been a concerted effort by the media, by governments for a long time for things that are ridiculed or not affirmed via the conventional channels to be laughed off the stage. And we now do it to each other. It's like they got us playing the game that they play, if that makes sense. And we become our own enemies, which is wild. So anyways, coming back to this idea, the person who came forward and gave these accounts, who knows, maybe it was Angela Ford, maybe Russell Targ. I just want to throw out a couple of potential names as to who those people could have been that would have come forward and given those detailed accounts. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is super cool that this video mentions, which is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I don't know too much about this book, but it mentioned it, and I was blown away by it and actually bought it. I haven't read it yet. I think it should be coming by Sunday or Monday. I've still got so many other books on my list to read, but I can't wait to read this book. And it actually talks about the Tibetan Book of the Dead as being an instruction manual for leaving this purported white trap. Fascinating, fascinating stuff. Check this out.
How do we escape? And the answer has been hidden in the one place they never thought we would look, inside the suppressed texts of the souls who successfully broke free. The Bardo Thodol, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, provides explicit navigation instructions. When you die, you will experience the clear light of the void. This is your true nature, pure consciousness, infinite and free. Do not be afraid of it. Rest in it. But then the secondary lights will appear, colored lights, tunnels, doorways, and this is when the trap activates. Avoid all lights. Avoid all sounds. Avoid all visions. Do not approach deceased loved ones. They are projected bait. Do not enter any tunnel, any doorway, any portal that promises reunion or peace. Remain in the void. This is where liberation exists, beyond the simulation, beyond the Archon control.
Very, very interesting. I'm very curious to know if those are direct quotes where it says avoid all lights, etc. And I'll know once I eventually dive into this material and dive into that book, amongst many others that I've now ordered and are slowly arriving at my at my place as we speak. The one thing I want to end on is a note of positivity. If this entire narrative and all of this is indeed true or rings true in some capacity, which again, I have just stumbled upon all this information about Gnosticism, about a soul trap, about reincarnation being a trap, all of this within the last 2 months. This is brand new to me. I am a noob at this. So I'm by no means an expert, but what does seem to be a reoccurring theme over and over in everything I'm reading, listening, watching, learning, and this is the saving grace, is that compliance is necessary, meaning we have to agree to come back at some level, whether it's via deception or not, but we ultimately choose to come back once after we pass on. So the silver lining seems to be that the control is in our hands at some level, whether we may acknowledge that or not, but the ultimate decision to return or not is within us. And that's a very beautiful thing to recognize. I do believe that to be true, that ultimately free will is exactly what will set us free. And I think on this world, on this planet, in this life, and this may be part of the design, I don't know, but we almost lose sight of the power of free will and the power of our own mind and thoughts. And maybe that's part of the conditioning. Maybe that's what we agree to. I wouldn't be surprised if we agree to that when we come into this life, to all these circumstances that while we're here, we don't want to endure, but we agree to them ahead of the time. So then we're here, and then we're going through difficulties, and we wish we weren't going through these difficulties. But it seems like our free will to say, hey, I don't want this to be happening anymore, isn't working. Right. And so we're like, well, maybe our not wanting this to happen, it's powerless. We can't do anything. We're helpless. But in fact, we're not helpless. We agreed to this ahead of time. So everything that's unfolding is of our own choosing. But while we're here, we don't feel that way. And maybe that weakens our resolve to trust in our free will and trust in our ability that we don't have to say yes and we don't have to return. But if we just remember who we are and that ultimately we have the authority, and remember this, remember pink tourmaline, remember self-love, love yourself, respect yourself. If you remember that, perhaps that is the key to freedom, if you indeed want to be free of the trap and want to be free of coming back next time around. So there it is. Just want to share that with you guys. Was blown away when I saw this video. Thought it was very, very, very interesting. Have a lot more to learn, a lot more to discover. But I hope you found that useful. And if you're on a similar journey right now, trying to learn information and trying to grow and trying to understand what this is all about, I hope this helps direct you on your way. If you have dissenting opinions as well, please feel free to share them in the comments. I want this to be an open forum. I'm already starting to, as the channel's growing and the videos are getting more views, I'm getting some of these types of, I don't want to call them negative comments, but definitely comments that are, because nobody's really been rude or anything like that, but stating that they don't agree with certain accounts from like David Icke or other folks, and why. Let's all go on this together. Let's not attack each other. Let's try and be open-minded. Let's not come from a place of certainty where, like, I know that this is the way and this way is crazy. I'm gonna tell you why. Let's just share. But I want to hear differing perspectives, especially since I've come from like multiple different perspectives throughout my life, going from one particular Abrahamic faith to even exploring with others, to going to agnostic, to going to thinking that extraterrestrial life is the key, to going with this new age spiritualism, to now where I'm at right now. And I'm sure it's going to continue to evolve and grow. And that's the beauty of being open-minded. So yes, share, comment, show me the way, and let's all learn together. Thank you guys so much for joining, and I'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.